got it.
Good. Okay. So we're looking at important figures in global history, and I've often mentioned to my classes that there are a few people that stick out in my mind and are my favorite characters in global history. And I think my all-time favorite is Otto von Bismarck. And he is responsible for unifying Germany. And I'll talk about him in another session. But Germany was broken up into several parts. He came from Prussia, and under his leadership, Prussia became the most important state among the German states, and he was able to control events and lead Germany into a war with Denmark, I should say Prussia into war with Denmark, then with Austria, and eventually with France, and the eventual outcome was the unification of Germany. So he would be an example of nationalism. Karl Marx, this was a political figure, a leader. Karl Marx was a writer. Right? Marx wrote a number of books on economics, and he criticized industrial capitalism, believed that capitalism led to a situation where society was broken up into two groups, the haves and the have-nots, throughout history. And during the time of the Industrial Revolution, Marx believed that the haves were the owners of businesses, the have-nots were the workers, and Marx believed that the have-nots, the workers, would eventually revolt, take control of the economic system, and replace industrial capitalism with government ownership, and which was he called his solution communism. And under communism, there would not be any haves and have-nots. There would only be one classless society. And Marx, again a writer, influenced a number of other people. Lenin was influenced by Karl Marx. Stalin was influenced by Karl Marx. Gorbachev was influenced by Karl Marx. Ho Chi Minh was influenced by Karl Marx. Pol Pot was influenced by Karl Marx. Lenin believed that there would be a revolution based on the ideas of Karl Marx. So there was a revolution. Lenin is a Russian, not his real name. His real name was Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov. But he had to go into exile, so he had to change his name. This is an alias. Lenin was involved in the overthrow of the government of Russia, Second Revolution in 1917, and established, so Lenin established communism in Russia in 1917 and was the first leader of Russia as a communist country until the 1920s when he passed away. The next important leader in Russia under communism was Joseph Stalin, not his real name. Another alias. Why? Because he and Lenin were considered to be dangerous and had to hide, so they had to change their name. Stalin led Russia from 1920s until 1953. During Stalin's reign, when he was in control, we referred to, it actually started back with Lenin, but Russia now is known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Right? These are the same place. So Stalin was during his time in office, the Soviet Union became an totalitarian state. A dictator with Stalin as the leader and only one legal political party. So Stalin was the leader of Russia until 1953. And a very, very violent leader. And he's often connected with the five-year plans, which were aimed at industrializing the USSR. The five-year plans are an example of a command economy. When Stalin was in power in the Soviet Union, the government directed what would be produced, how much would be produced, what the cost was. So the supply and demand was not in existence in Russia. Their economic plan was government directed. And another important thing that you connect with Stalin is oftentimes they referred to purges, where Stalin basically attempted to eliminate anyone who was opposed to his ideas. Now on that, make sure that if there's a clock, if it goes to 10 minutes, we got to stop it and go again. Okay, is there a time on it?
8:15.
8:15? Okay. Is it still running? Okay. Okay. We'll come back to these others. Gandhi, we connect with nationalism as we did connect Bismarck with nationalism. Gandhi wanted to make his country independent. His country was a victim of imperialism. Right? His country was India, and it was a British colony. And in the 1930s and the 1940s, Gandhi followed a policy of passive resistance and non-violence, tied in with civil disobedience. Right? Disobey laws that they disagreed, that they felt were unfair. Non-violent passive resistance, not to react to the government actions, the British, by violence, but to be non-violent. And eventually, the Salt March is one of the famous examples of them disobeying a law that they believed, the tax on salt, which they believed was wrong. And eventually, India became independent, and the man who practiced nonviolence was a victim of violence.